Hello and welcome to Medialine. My name is Dinah's Holly. In this short video, we would like to present to you how we at Medialine understand development and operations, so-called DevOps, and how we apply this in our software projects and in the execution of our other projects, respectively. In our presentation, DevOps are illustrated as an 8-step process, visualized in a roller coaster shape. This is representative of our repetitive process flow that occurs when the business software that we at Medialine execute in projects is accordingly installed and integrated by clients into their business. DevOps always begin with a plan. Once a business has decided they would like to implement a new business system or software, be it ECM system, document management, ERP system for inventory management, it has to plan for the implementation of such a software and come to us with the request. There are different elements in the planning stage which must be described in detail before we can proceed to the next phase known as code. In the code phase, additional programming is carried out to create extensions in the already existing business system or software based on the requirements of the client. It is from this stage that we proceed into the build phase. In the build phase, the test system, in which tests will be carried out and upon which the productive system will be prepared, is built. Once the test system has been built, the software can be tested for usability and functionality. The client's approval of the test system marks the end of the test phase and the beginning of the release phase. In the release phase, the client tests are carried out by key users and consultants. And once the tests have been successfully carried out, the client has declared their approval of the software. It can be rolled out and deployed in the next phase. This next phase is what we call the deploy phase. Here, we have to ascertain that the existing infrastructure of the client can support the new software before we proceed to transfer the software into the productive system and go live. Once the business has gone live and is using the software productively, we are in the operation phase. In this phase, we carry out quality assurance to be able to ascertain the optimality and usability of the software, and we collect feedback. It is this feedback that we use as basis for the next phase, known as monitor. In the monitoring phase, we monitor and analyze the performance of the software. We analyze the usability, the performance, and if there are any errors or need for changes or adaptations to be made to the software. If we discover that there are any changes or adaptations that can be made, it is now time to go back to planning, as we have to plan how we are going to execute these changes or adaptability. This way, we have completed our cycle in our roller coaster and the process begins again. We will now take a further look into the details, beginning with the phase known as plan. Once a business decides they would like to implement a new software, the planning phase begins. The first thing, a quotation is sent out to the client or the possible client containing all the possible costs for the execution of the project and the implementation of the software into the business. Once the terms and conditions and costs are agreeable on both sides, a confirmation of order is sent. This marks the beginning of the project. Immediately after, a workshop is often arranged in which the client and we at Medialine sit together and discuss what kind of a software the client would like to implement, what their business structures are, what their workflows and their processes are, and how they would like to have this realized in the new software that they would like to implement. Based on these discussions that we have in the workshop, a functional specification is written. This is basically a document that describes the current state of the business and what the intended state of the business should be once the software has been executed into this business. Based on this documentation, a technical specification is written. This is basically a documentation describing how the company will be taken from its current state using this software to its intended state. When the technical specification has been written, it is sent out to the client for approval, and once the client has approved this, the project leader and his team begin to plan for the projects, and we enter into the phase known as project planning. In this phase, all resources are considered and a time plan is drawn up. This then leads us to the next stage known as code. In the phase code, we address the function extensions for which the client has decided on by scripting or programming. This could be in the automation of business processes, or creating workflows that are based on the software, or creating interfaces to other software and programs. All the configuration, be it programming and scripting, occurs in this stage and forms the basis for our next stage, which is called build. After the scripting and programming of the previous stage, a test system is erected in the phase build. It is in this system that all tests can be carried out and on which the productive system will be prepared. If the client so wishes, additional modules can be installed by a software consultant before proceeding to the customization. This then leads us into the next phase, known as test. In this phase, test plans are created on how the new system or software can be tested. Which areas must be especially tested? What kind of user should test? These are all things and questions that must be decided beforehand. A testing document is created to guideline how the tests should be carried out and can be used to look back on what was tested and what was not, and if necessary, what still needs to be tested. Both technical and functional tests are carried out on the software application, much like in the V model, which is discussed separately. The approval of the software in the test system marks the end of the test phase and leads us into the next phase, called release. The phase release, much like the phase test, involves testing. This time, client tests. These are carried out by key users. Once the tests have been successfully carried out, the client gives their approval in a declaration of acceptance. With this document, the client declares the software application or system is functional and works as was intended. Hereafter, necessary training is offered to the client's employees so that the software can be rolled out and deployed, which brings us to our next phase, known as deploy. In the phase deploy, it is necessary to ascertain whether the client's existing infrastructure is able to support the new software before transporting it into the productive system. Once the client rolls out the new software, a system integration occurs. For this, an operational manual is made available to the client to guide the employees as they adapt to the new system on its function and uses. Finally, the client can go live with the new software. That is to say, they can use the software in their everyday business. The moment the client goes live with the new software, it can now use the software actively. In this operation phase, quality assurance is carried out in which the configuration and programming are closely watched to check whether the software meets their requirements, down to the smallest details. In this phase, we offer the client support as they familiarize themselves with the new system, and we collect feedback so as to optimize the software and arrive at the intended results. Based on this feedback that we receive and collect, we then proceed into the next stage known as monitor. In the phase monitor, we try to analyze the user behavior with the system. Is the system performing as designed? Are there any flaws or errors? Are there any requirements for correction, changes, or adaptations? If we find that there is need for correction or changes or adaptations, we would then have to go back to planning, as we would have to plan how we are going to implement or execute these changes, adaptations, or corrections. This would take us through the cycle again and bring us back to planning, marking the completion of our roller coaster cycle. We have now come to the end of our procedural roller coaster. I hope we were able to give you a closer view on how we proceed in our software projects and how we, alongside the client, implement software applications into several and different businesses. Should you have questions, please do not hesitate to contact us over on our website or directly through our colleagues, whose contacts you may already have. Thank you for your time.